Okay, we'll go ahead and call this council work session to order. It's Wednesday, November 6th. The time is 2 p.m. I'll go ahead and make one for visitor comments. If you'd like to come up and make a comment, please keep it to 3 minutes or less, and we'll be taking notes of action if needed. You got some big. You'll be next.
I have the task of commenting on two reports that are coming up.
Can you state?
My name is Stephen Topin. Thank you. The one comment I'll start off with is the Port of Columbia County's Albert. That's the other will be the waterfront comment on that report this afternoon. This is a report by DEQ dated May 31st, 2023 on the complete fix-up of the Pope and Talbot property. It's a $25 million bill. It goes all the way back to investigations back to 2014. In it, there's a number of drawings showing what has to be done and drill hole. The report is presented in the council's agenda is a 10-port report. Most of the stuff that's in it came from here with a few very bad misplaced things. In order to clean this up, and this report requires everything that be dug out, but most important, a membrane be put in place. Membrane in this case is a dirt wall that goes from the surface to the bedrock from 30 to 35 feet in one end to 50 in the other. If not, what's in the Pope and Talbot after it is cleaned up, which meant dug out and hauled away, would still go into the Scappoose Bay, polluting it and further our water supply. The report that is presented in the agenda is just going to put a heavy cap on it, which says that piece of property cannot be used for any construction because of what's underneath it. It also does not stop the pollution, which at this time is high grade because it's not removed, leaching into the water and our water supply. It also makes no attempt to handle, which is another DEQ report, the leachate that's coming from the Boise dump up behind the courthouse. As I say, the other thing is, this says what has to be done May 31st, 2023. Seems every time DEQ has a new director for this area, the last 25 years, the approach to doing it changes, which means they put back to square one. The court has put a few $1 million a number of times into it and basically can't use the material. The next one is there are a number of reports on the waterfront that have been published about the contamination down at the waterfront dating back to 2022, 2015, talking about all the pollution and contamination in it. The present work shows it's a lot more. The MoForest, the big report, only looks back at the pollution that might have been caused by the veneer mill. They do note in their report that that property has been occupied by mills and various industries since 1870 with lead contamination. The other thing they point out is that whole area, because it's filled, has a problem with liquefaction dependent upon the river level. MoForest only talks about a river level changing of 2.5 feet. The people here also remember the 1996 flood, which covered it, and also the 1945 flood, which covered another 3 feet. The cost of removing contaminated soil to a licensed dump basically is $200 an hour for the truck to haul it. $1,000 for a 10-yard truck. Those prices that I got from DEQ and the truckers in 2015. The report on the waterfront does not talk about where the OSHA's been contacted about the contamination, whether the people having to remove it have been trained, having to do with the toxicity and no cost to how much was needed and how much material was moved. Basically, the report that Moore Forster put out in 2015 says you can't build residences on it because of two things: foundation problems, which some of it's water, and contamination. We know where that's going. And hopefully this administrator and the project managers will bring it on what exactly is happening on that property. Thank you.
If you'd like to come on up and state your name for the record, please.
I'm Richard Lever. And I live out on Sykes Road, out there by the McBride School. And there's log trucks coming down there using their Jake brakes 2-3 times a day. And I don't believe they need them on. I used to drive truck. And there is no need for Jake brakes when they get down to Abishon. Down there between the two Abishons where we live. I think they need to put signs up as they come into city limits, no exhaust brakes for the big trucks. I drove truck for 28 years, so I know what I'm talking about. You know my brother Jerry in the Opportunity Center, yeah. They just moved him back to St. Helens. So that's what came in here for.
See what we can do
All right,
for engineering. I know that it's allowed, but we'll see what we can.
yeah. The city limit just up the road a little ways, but it's not that steep of a hill anymore that they use their brakes that little bit.
An existing ordinance, big breaks.
I just looked at, talked to the city ordinance officer.
Michael,
He said there was no ordinance against Jake brakes in this town. A lot of cities do have ordinances against them.
all right, thank you.
Sorry about your loss.
Yep, that's right. All part of the game.
Standing, I'm going to sit for 30 seconds. Howard Blumenthal. The thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was that Halloween Town looked like it was a great success this year. I was very happy to see that it was a reasonable amount of time, only 1 month. What my comments come down to is that for the first time in the history of the event, they actually put up huge detour signs, detouring all the traffic up into the residential neighborhood so people get in the backside of the town. We had 50 to 75 cars in one day come down our dead end street just to turn around and look for parking places on a dead end street up there. We had people that were parking in front of fire hydrants, right to the edges of people's driveways. At 3rd and Tualatin Street, they actually parked around the corners, on the corners. And when the police were called about it, I love our police, don't get me wrong, and they're standing here. I was told we only had 2 officers on duty during that great big huge event. If we're having a big huge event, I think we need to have a little more than 2 officers on duty if we're bringing between 2 and 5, 6,000 people into our community. Then I was told that they needed to talk to their supervisor to see if they could ticket the people that were in front of the fire hydrants and parked on the corners. I do not understand why any police officer would have to ask if somebody's illegally parked, are they supposed to give them a ticket? They should just get the ticket, you know. Also, during the afternoons and stuff, luckily I didn't try to go out, but I heard from a few different people that since they've done the nightmare on 4th Street, that trying to come out of our neighborhood and make a left-hand turn to go up the hill to get away from all of that was becoming almost impossible for the volume of people and cars that were coming down there. So I would like to suggest that they should have traffic control at that intersection to help get the people out of our neighborhood. You know, we are a neighborhood up there. I also heard that at one point, when you guys have that blocked off, that there's only then two ways for us to get out of that neighborhood, and the one closer to John Gunn School was so gummed up, you couldn't even get out that way. So you need to think a little bit about making it a little easier for the residents who live up there to have our traffic flow and, you know, there's no reason for people to be parked on all four corners of intersections, making it really hard to pull off of our quiet residential streets, you know. Other than that, I think Halloween Town looked like it was a great success this year. I like the length of it and hope to see it again next year. Thank you.
Looks like to speak.
Brady Brian, first, the numbers that Mr. Topaz gave for the Port Talbot is a little off. It's 32 million plus cleanup. So let's go right into the Halloween Town. Unlike Howard, who was running around the neighborhood complaining about it's the worst it's ever been, certainly has a different tune now. Complaining about the parking, it's like, yeah, you get what you wish for. To me, it was a disaster event. They physically tried to remove me after buying a ticket. And then, of course, the misinformation they're spreading in the paper about 12,000 people is just ridiculous. That reflects upon the city when they are spreading those kind of lies. I mean, if that's really the case, then I guess we have no money problem, because if we really had 12,000 people here every day, then we should have tons of money. I've already put in a records request for those final numbers. I think we're not gonna find that there were 12,000 people here, but we'll see. The other big issue that's on the topic is the election and the police chief. There has been a lot of speculation and information about the involvement of the mayor-elect with our police chief. And that needs to come out before the end of this year, before this council changes. Because if that's correct, or there's anything true to that, then that's a huge problem. We have already a conflict with a mayor and the police. And it's nothing to speak against the new management, the acting police chief. I think he's gonna do a fine job. He's certainly an improvement over what we had. But if there's anything to the fact that there was involvement politically with the coverage and the mayor's race, then that needs to come out. The huge other big item is the city's negligence to follow the sign ordinances against one of those candidates who has signs everywhere that are illegally lighted, illegally placed, and you didn't enforce your ordinances. And you need to enforce your ordinances. And I don't know who that falls on, if it's not the council. I mean, I don't know if I have to then personally go to court, sue the city, sue the candidate. I don't know, but I think it's unacceptable that those ordinances are not enforced and that the city just turned a blind eye and pretended that it was okay, because it's not okay.
Thank you. Other visitor comments? Anybody on Zoom?
Nobody raised their, oh, wait, somebody raised their hand. Says phone call. Just a minute.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yeah, and go ahead, Holcomb.
Hey, Rick. Hey, I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I just wanted a chance to kind of put in my 2 cents about the Friday 5 p.m. street closures during Halloween Town. I mean, Rick, we talked about this. That was really economically damaging to us as a business. I just want the city to really, hopefully, take great care about the process of street closures with respect to affected businesses. None of the restaurants I spoke with, all 5 of us down there, knew about the street closures. And the producers insisted we did. And in the permit application, they sort of scrawled on the page they were supposed to present us to get our consent or consent about street closure, discussed verbally with businesses. And we certainly spoke with them in advance, but we were all stunned when the street closed at 5 p.m. and there was no detour. And I think we all know the neighbors don't want anyone detouring through those towns, as the gentleman earlier said. And to be honest, it's a very complex detour. And I know this will, improve in the future. But I just hope the city, when you are reviewing what happened this year, will look at, the permit. They did not inform us of 5 p.m. closures. Restaurants, we open at 4 o'clock on Fridays, and the money we make from locals and regulars every Friday for dinner is more than we make any other day. That's true for Halloween Town as well. I was sending my staff home. They were losing tips. We're a local amenity that exists, year round. And we squirrel away the money we make in summer and fall to maintain our employees in the winter. So I just want to implore the city, please don't shut the economic zone down there on a Friday evening. Like, there's restaurants, there's a movie theater, like, we are a Friday night thing. So that's my big point. And I just hope when you review what happened, you take a really close look at why we shut this city down to set up outside vendors and how we can avoid doing that with better, a little better strategy next year. That's it.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
testimony, Holcomb. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yep. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna go on to length of service awards. My first length of service recognition goes to Matt Molden. Matt is not here today. He has 25 years of service in our St. Helens Police Department, and he has continued to be dedicated and to our department and was outstanding. And I understand he's on vacation, well deserved. So we wish he was here, but we're glad he's on vacation. So I'm gonna go on to our next one, who is Jeremy Howell, who has been with the St. Helens Police Department for 20 years. And Jeremy's lived around here all his life. His dad taught me in high school. So it's a huge commitment. Anywhere 20 years is a big deal. And you were SRO for quite a while too. So you
7 years.
Yeah, I've gotten to know our kids and yeah, we definitely appreciate you.
Jeremy.
Okay, and then we're gonna go on to our next length of service award, which is to our lead engineer, Sharon DeRoe. Yes, with 15 years, the city of St. Helens. And I just want to give a shout out to all the hard work that she's been putting in on this waterfront project and all the technicalities to it, and always making sure that there's nothing lost in looking at these projects. Very, very thoughtful and has always got the best interest of the citizens in the city first. So Sharon, you want to come on up? Thank you, Sharon. Yeah. Okay, and then we have Scott Harrington, who is in our Public Works, who is not gonna be able to make it today, but yeah, if you know Public Works, they're always out there digging trenches, putting pipes in the ground to storm damage, to flood this time of year. We're gonna start clearing storm drains. If you happen to see one, please grab a rake and help us out a little bit. But wanna congratulate him on 10 years of service, so thank you, Scott. Right. Oh, that clears that. That was quite a few of them. Congratulations to all.
Really long years in there.
Yes, there is. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the Port of Columbia County update from formal Pope and Talbot Wood Treatment Site, brownfield cleanup and reuse plan. Elliot Levin and Sean Clark.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and City Councilors and Administrator. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to talk to you about the Port's EPA brownfield cleanup and grant application. My name is Elliot Levin, and I am with the Port of Columbia County and managing the cleanup of the Port's Pope and Talbot site. I'm joined by our Executive Director, Sean Clark. And online, I'm hoping Katie Dougherty is there. Good, and Gina Sisco and Laura Coles up here in the room with us. Katie Dougherty is DEQ's manager of the Pope and Talbot property and is here to respond to any questions that you may have and possibly expand upon what I present. Gina and Lacey are members of our grant application team and may also have things to add. Slide, please. So this slide shows you the location of the Pope and Talbot site. The property is indicated in red and sits just below Railroad Avenue on the Multnomah Channel. To the north, you can see St. Helens, and lying between St. Helens and Pope and Talbot is the Boise property. And immediate south was St. Helens Fiberboard, more recently known as Armstrong World Industries. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the site as it appears today. And you can see there's not much on there. There's a workshop and former sawmill for the two structures up towards the far side of the property. And along the shoreline, you may be able to see some remaining dock structure to the right and to the left. And in the center there, you can see labeled the former transfer table at the center of the shoreline. And if you note that structure, it might help you orientate yourself when you see the next slide. As you're about to see, the Pope and Talbot site used to look very different from what it does today. Next slide, please. So this photo shows the site in 1929. Please ignore the reddish pink area of the photo. It's from the original photograph and not related to today's discussion. And while it may be hard to see all the details, you can tell there were many structures on the property. And on the left, you see various creosote and fuel storage tanks. The large creosote tank at the top left of the photo is located just above the shop building you saw in the preceding slide. The transfer table I mentioned in the prior slide is at the center of the shoreline and consists of that maze of timber structure you can see in this photo. From 1912 to 1960, Pope and Talbot operated a wood treatment operation on this 42-acre site. That operation included treating logs with creosote, the presence of which can still be detected in the soil above and below the waterline today. Pope and Talbot ceased operations in 1960 and removed the remnants of the various upland structures, which you can see in this photograph, between 1960 and 1974. The port purchased the property in 1963, while Pope and Talbot was still in the process of removing those structures. Since the port has owned the site, it has mostly sat vacant with periodic use for small-scale business operations. I want to emphasize what I just said. The contamination here was caused by activities that occurred before the port bought the property. However, in 2008, Pope and Talbot went bankrupt, and the port, by virtue of owning the property, became the sole responsible party for the cleanup. By extension, that means the citizens of Columbia County are left with the cost and responsibility to restore the site. So Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, has been investigating this site since the 1980s. working to determine the extent of the creosote contamination and determine how to clean it. The Port and DEQ have made significant progress over the last few years, and that culminated in the release of DEQ's Record of Decision, ROD, last year. That document provides a roadmap for cleaning up the site, and we are now preparing to enter the next phase, which will involve designing and implementing the cleanup called for in the ROD. Port staff has been talking to Columbia Pacific Economic Development District, or COLPAC, Business Oregon, the EPA, and DEQ about funding options that may be available, including EPA brownfield cleanup grants. Last September, EPA announced this year's grant cycle, which allocates $100 million to clean up brownfield sites with individual grants available of up to $4 million. Next slide, please. So the site has been divided into 5 distinct priority action areas. This slide shows them starting in the center. You can see Upland Area 1, which is the only shore-based priority action area. And this is the subject of our grant application. The other ones, if you continue looking counterclockwise, is Upper Milton Creek, Cove, and then along the shoreline Area 1 dock and Area 2 dock. I've also indicated Upland Area 2. That is actually a no further action area based on minimal disruptive use of that area. The cleanup of Upland Area 1 will include placing a cap on top of several feet of dredge spoils that were placed on the site in the early 1970s, and the installation of a permeable reactive barrier. Picture an underground wall on the slope below the cap that will capture and remove creosote from groundwater traveling along the slope before it enters the Multnomah Channel. The details of the cleanup of the 4 in-water priority action areas differ slightly from each other, but still generally involve removing any remaining dock structures, mostly dock piles that you saw in the preceding pictures, and removing contaminated soil and then placing a cap over any contaminated soil that remains. A rough estimate of the cost to clean and maintain all 5 priority action areas is over $30 million. That greatly exceeds the Port and DEQ's capabilities, as well as the grant limits this cycle. The good news is that we can apply for grants separately for each priority action area, but we are limited to 1 application per site per year. For this purpose, the division of the Pope and Talbot site into 5 distinct priority action areas actually works quite well. Working with DEQ and the Port's consultants, we determined that prioritizing Upland Area 1 made the most sense for several reasons. First, it is above the other priority action areas, so once it's cleaned, there's no risk of it being repolluted by one of the remaining priority action areas. Second, we can phase the implementation to match the available grant funding. This grant cycle, we hope to receive funding to install the cap. The permeable reactive barrier would be installed during a later phase when the funding allows. Third advantage of the Upland area is that it is adjacent to that no further action area shown as Upland Area 2. This will significantly increase the land available for redevelopment, yet another criterion which EPA will consider when they have considered the grant applications. So here's a slide of the site we looked at earlier. I've added a red circle that shows Upland Area 1, which consists of roughly 25 acres. The grassy area to the right is the no further action, which is about 17 acres. So combined, the 2 areas would equal the 42 acres that I mentioned earlier. However, the actual land available for development will be somewhat less because we need to maintain access to clean the 4 remaining priority action areas and to install that permeable reactive barrier. Next slide. The last April, the St. Helens Park and Trails Commission attended a Port Commission meeting and introduced the commissioners and staff to the proposed St. Helens Milton Creek Trail Development Project. That project would create a trail system linking McCormick Park with St. Helens waterfront, including a roughly 2.6-mile loop trail. As I mentioned earlier, the EPA will judge our application based on the port's redevelopment plan for the site, And we would like to include this project alongside possible industrial development. So this slide was taken from last April's presentation to the Port Commission and depicts the route that was presented to us at that meeting. So the project trail, which you may be familiar with, is shown in line, and it goes from McCormick Park, following Milton Creek towards the channel, and then follows the shoreline up towards St. Helens. Unfortunately, that path, as depicted here, runs right along the 4 priority action areas that will remain after Upland Area 1 is capped. So therefore, we would expect, at least temporarily, the lower portion of the trail will need to be relocated away from the in-water priority action areas and further future location of the permeable reactive barrier and move towards the Boise end of the property. Next slide. So the red line in this slide shows the approximate location of the proposed trail you saw in the prior slide. I've marked it out in red. And the white lines on the left and lower end are the Port's property in that area. So you can see Pope and Talbot at the bottom, and then we have some properties above that lie between McCormick Park and Pope and Talbot. So as you can see, the proposed trail would leave the park, follow Milton Creek, crossing port and city-owned land north of Pope and Talbot, and then continue to go follow the shoreline up to the city. So as I mentioned, the trail, at least temporarily, would need to be rerouted away from those remaining priority action areas. So the green line that I put here is just my attempt to illustrate a possible path where the trail could follow the north end of Pope and Talbot and then fall down to the original path footprint by the Boise end of the property. I should also mention that in addition to accommodating the trail system, the Port will continue to seek industrial development for the site, which is in accordance with the Port's economic development mission. However, most of this property is within the flood zone. So it will be challenging, and we anticipate lighter use suitable to that kind of area versus a very heavy industry in that area. So how much will it cost? The pre-engineering estimate to place the CAT in Upland Area 1 is roughly $5 million. As I mentioned, the grant request is for $4 million. That leaves a shortfall of $1 million. Fortunately, DEQ has committed $500,000 of orphan funding to help make up that shortfall. And the balance would be made up through insurance funds that we've collected from our insurance companies. And then at the bottom, I just note again that the total cleanup and monitoring costs, and I should mention that monitoring costs includes 100 years of monitoring into the future, is roughly $30 million. So this year, next year, EPA brownfield cleanup grants are available for the $4 million I've mentioned. But my understanding is these are larger than the usual amounts, which tend to be closer to 500,000. So you can see future funding will continue to be an immense challenge for us as we work to cobble together funding to clean the balance of the site. Next slide. And does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so how long do you expect it'll take for that area one cleanup if you have the funding?
If we get the funding, it could be pretty quick because it's above ground, so we're not limited to in water construction windows. And it's really, if you just picture putting a parking lot. So estimates, maybe it could be ready within a year or so.
One clarifying question. You said that in the 70s is when they started the cleanup, but in 2008 is when the port took over the cleanup. So how much cleanup was done during that time period?
So in the 70s, it was some soil was put on there from, I think it was dredge spoils, excuse me. Dredge spoils was placed there in the 70s. And then there was continuing studies being done up and through 2008 when Pope and Talbot went
So
bankrupt.
they really didn't do much.
They did
Cleaned up the site of the
Money.
buildings of the structures in the 70s, yeah, up until 74.
I was like, that's a long time period for them not to do much, but it is.
So it roughly would open up though about, seems to me like a good 30 acres of industrial property
Yes.
that has deep water port and rail to it.
It's not, the shore there, the water there's not particularly deep.
But it is, I think, considered deep water port all the way up to Molten Plywood. Is your guys's too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
didn't.
sure.
Yeah,
Water,
barges,
we think ships.
Yeah,
barges come and go from there.
yeah, I'm a blue water guy, so to me, it's
Yeah.
not. I get you.
And that's still considered a deep water port, even though it's not deep. So it's ironic. It's, yeah. And I would just like to speak a little bit on the trails, and maybe Counselor Sunday can chime in, but we go back to those. Trail. Is that for people watching need to understand that it's a really beautiful chunk of property walking down through there, and it's riparian buffer anyhow. Except for on the port side, which could have industry, and that's why I was asking a little bit about that. But it really makes sense to have some type of connector. It's like you're just in a different area when you're down there. And you're only a 5-minute walk and you're back into the thick of town. Would you like to speak on that a little
Yeah,
bit?
so if you've tuned in at any of the Parks and Trails Commission meetings, they've been talking about this now for probably a good year.
Mhm.
And I believe you guys are coming to the next meeting to, I don't know if it's the same presentation or something similar, but
We'll reorder the slides.
okay. But yeah, a really beautiful piece of property, and the Parks Commission is really determined to dedicate a portion of that close to the creek, the most scenic and beautiful part of it to so the community can enjoy that and get some use out of it. So
Yeah, there's a plateau on the mill side that is absolutely gorgeous. It just is.
no, really pretty creek and some
The old park.
some camas fields, and yep, the old Boise Park.
Yep.
Some
The plateau has a chemist field on it too.
nice area in there.
Well, I applaud the port for all of your guys' work that you've done on this and trying to bring our lands back to us so we can use them. So thank you.
We're just excited to hopefully start doing something on the site. You know, we've been working through the DEQ process for a long time, and we've got some really good folks there helping us now, and feel like we got some really good efforts to move something forward. So.
Yeah, it's kind of a blow to the port when Fulton Talbot filed bankruptcy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you bought it in 1963, is that what I wrote down here? And but they were doing this cleanup work between 60 and or decommissioning, shutting down 60 and 64. Yeah, so
The EQ just gave you the process to go ahead.
Yeah, the rod was finalized last year,
Final.
about a year ago.
They've been looking at this for how long? I mean, that's a 60-year span.
They started in the late 80s with the very preliminary work. Investigating the site, and then it picked up in the 90s, 2000s, and then I think some momentum got lost around the bankruptcy.
It's a long time.
hey, any other questions? All right, thanks for showing up. Any questions for the DEQ lady? I forget your name, I apologize.
Katie.
Hang on, I have to bring her up.
Katie? I was gonna ask if you would like to have any input on, I mean, you're the representative of this. Could you maybe just give us an overview of what DEQ is thinking on this? Because we have other DEQ stuff in our area too, so collectively, it'd be nice to. be working-
Sure.
Yeah,
Can you hear me okay?
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, so I would just say that DEQ and the port are working very collaboratively to try to fund the work on Pulp and Talbot. We also are very heavily involved in the some cleanup work that's going on in the Armstrong World Industries in water area. And then also the Boise, the adjacent Boise property is also they're in the design phase of their in-water work. So there is actually a lot of DQ oversight of projects going on right there, just on those 3 properties, so. But we do understand for Pope and Talbot, it's primarily a funding limitation. And we are trying to work creatively to come up with $30 million.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
We'll go on to our next item, which is Police Department Semi-Annual Report. Acting Chief. Oh. How you doing?
Okay,
Good.
good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. You know, in the past, we've done these semi-annual reports and usually with a slideshow with the calls that we've taken and some statistics. I wanted to do something a little bit different this time, since I saw that there was a discussion on the agenda. So I thought I'd just kind of get really right into that and talk about what we've been doing the last as it pertains to staffing and hiring. So really, I've kind of broken it down into 3 goals that we're already working on and will be working on in the very near future. The first one really is the one we started in October, and that's identifying strategies to restore or change policies. Really just revisiting how we do certain things, and specifically how we work with other agencies in the county, to where there's a little bit more, better working relationship, because the bottom line, we ask for a lot of help from other agencies. So this really paid off for us during Halloween Town. We were able to get a sheriff's deputy for all day long. So I'm interested in really expanding on that and getting more help and helping out more with the other agencies. So we're off to a good start on that, which I'm pleased to say. The other part of that is maybe streamlining our own workload without compromising the quality. And we had a staff meeting in early October, and I offered to take some work off their plate from some paperwork, and the officers turned it down. They said, no, we want to keep operating at that, level of efficiency, which I was impressed with. I think we all should be impressed with that. When I was a patrol officer, I would have certainly taken up the offer, but they didn't. They like the communication and the documentation necessary for that. So I thought that was great. Second goal is to communicate and brainstorm with staff to optimize our coverage. And the goal here, as we sat down as a staff, is to get to 24-hour coverage, and until staffing levels get a little bit better, to just get creative, communicate, and find a way to maintain that the best that we can without compromising our investigations. So meaning, I'm confident that the answer is to not simply remove detectives. They have a robust caseload. That caseload is some of our most vulnerable citizens. That's why they end up, of course, in these complex investigations. And I've never felt comfortable without having people, investigate those crimes to the fullest. So without compromising wellness. And that's really something I've been pushing. I think the staff just in the month is tired of me saying that, but I'm going to keep saying it, that there's a lot of avenues we can go down and some different things we can do. Speaking of restoring a policy, there's a wellness policy that we've had where it identifies or talks about identifying a wellness coordinator. So we're working on that to actually have, options for the officers to kind of, we consider these careers to be, now 35 years, some of them. What are we doing to preserve those? And I think there's, some mental health things that we can do to really, prolong those careers and make, the best out of those careers. And I think it starts with just that culture of all of us contributing to this. And I'm excited about that. So the challenge for that is to really accept the direction of having the coverage without compromising your critical investigations, and then throwing a wellness component with it. And in doing that, simply me returning to an old, outdated patrol schedule isn't going to cut it. Or as I like to say, it's not your father's police department. Lots of people, of course, have work schedules that they work in their jobs, or schedules that the police department did in the 80s and 90s. We're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about, different requirements, different expectations that we have for the officers, and again, prolonging their careers. So third goal is identifying a target for how many people we need to hire. And that's been something that there's been a lot of different numbers kind of floated around as to how many we can hire, what's the budget allow. And so yesterday I met with John Walsh, and we hammered it out. And for now, what we're looking at is to hire 4 patrol positions. And a lot of that is replacing officers. But the reality is that 4 is a lot, and that's going to keep us busy for a while.
How many is that replacing?
4.
Just simply replacing, not adding any officers?
Yes. So within that 4, there's going to be a internal process for a sergeant, which will allow us to hire 4 additional patrol officers. So sure, I want a much bigger number than that, but for right now, 4 is a lot to ask of any agency, especially our size. So realistically, that's going to keep me busy for a while. So that's really the 3 goals that we're working on, and we're off to a great start. And actually, we have interviews on November 12th for a new police officer. Statistically speaking, we're not going to get 4 of that one process. You'd have to go back. Well, I can't think of a time in the 26 years I've been here that we've been able to hire 4 off of one process. We've hired 2 a number of times, but so you're talking about a number of processes throughout the year. We've also had some internal discussions about really changing the process. Right now, we use National Testing Network, which identifies some top scores on some written tests. It's a fine process. We're not necessarily convinced that in and of itself identifies who would make a good police officer, but we whittle it down to the top scores, and then we interview them, which is okay. But again, you're talking about maybe a 20-25 minute interview with a candidate, and then we move them on to much more difficult stages of the hiring process. I think what we're going to do is go back to the drawing board and really build our own hiring process. And we've talked about having all day with the candidates, to where there's several panels, so we're thinking about maybe asking the high school if we can use their, on a summer day or maybe during spring break, to where you have several classrooms and different panels of officers that either you can ask questions, you can go through an interview process. We can take care of the physical fitness testing right there at the high school, of course. And so instead of a 20-minute interview where you have some scores attached to that, which is okay, but I'm not satisfied with just okay or the way we've always done things. So we're going to try this, and I think it's going to also have a lot of buy-in from the staff, since almost everyone's going to get a piece or a segment of this hiring process throughout that day. So 8 or 9 hour process, and we'll see how it goes. So, any questions about schedule or old schedules, new schedules?
One question.
Yes.
I was really sad to hear that you guys lost one of your records, ladies. I was curious what your plan is to handle that because records are very important investigations and just having a staff in the building available for the public when they come in and making sure that there is always someone there to talk to people. And so I'm just curious what your plan is for that.
Yeah, we're gonna hire for that as well. We have a process, we're starting on that. We had a discussion as a staff as to maybe not use that position for records and add an officer. But again, you know, through communicating with the staff, we were able to identify that this is something that we still need. Plus, there's an evidence handling component to that. Which we
Takes a lot of training and,
sure,
yeah, so I'm curious to see your plan with that. I'd love to see it.
yes. Yes.
Currently, how many patrol deputies do you have?
Patrol officers, I think we are at 11. Yes, and
Ideally, you'd like to have 15, is that what you're saying? For where we're at now, right now?
yes, I'd want 15. And that's really to get us to a point where we can sustain a schedule that, you know, we're really not having the discussion as far as, you know, trying to put something together just temporarily, which we can do. But what we're doing right now, I would never look at a police department and try to do this over a period of years. Really, we're just kind of going month to month right now until we get some people trained up so where they can be on solo patrol. We can hire some people and then start the process over with that. So, and we also have someone who's out on injury and so when that person returns, that'll help too.
That'll give you 16.
Yes.
And we
17.
17, and we've given you you have the funding to hire the 4, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Just double checking.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I wanted to have because like John and I and Kathy spoke yesterday about, we all need to have a number that we're all striving toward and we're all part of that. And so that's the number for now. And like I said, 4 is a pretty big task, but we'll get there.
And just 4 is like what we've already been paying for. So, I mean, it's really, you know, just replacing, you know, that into the budget, which we already budgeted for. So,
Yes, but 100%. But those 4 will at least, once we get them, go back to a sustainable schedule.
And we did fund above and beyond that, though.
That's what I thought.
Yes, we did. So, and I want to speak on that because the issue's been finding the officers to hire. When we were a little bit proactive in getting this going, and we put it out already once, and I think we got 1.
Yes, yeah, we got
Okay, we got 1. And you said it's pretty rare that you can hire 4 in one out of 1 interview. Rarely do you get 2.
correct.
What I heard you say.
And there's been hiring process where we've actually hired none.
Yes, so.
Do you happen to know, Lieutenant, how many applicants we have?
I don't know the full number. Kathy might.
Of completed applications, maybe 40. But right now, we have at least 14 that we're gonna interview. And that's 14 of like that have completed their application.
we've talked about this before, Joe. And so, I mean, the problem is not necessarily, it is a problem with the pool out there for police officers is shrink, right? There's just not a lot of good applicants. And then how long it takes for them to get through the academy training to actually be on the road. Like it's a lengthy process. But the problem really has been, and you're the one who brought this to my attention, has been that when we hear an officer is retiring, that's when we should be starting the process. So we have to find a way to fund 2 kind of officers at the same time to replace. That's always been the problem, right?
Right. Yeah, and that got worse actually
Yeah.
when there was the delays in the academy.
Yeah.
So it's a lengthy process before going back several years. And it got really lengthy here in the last year. So I think definitely my target is to get the number that we need right now and then have discussions down the road about adding to staff. But without having kind of just a goal right now, it would get so overwhelming when if we said we need to hire 10 officers or something like that, which would be great. But I think we need to concentrate on who we need to replace right now. Incredibly cumbersome to get them trained. About 1 in 4 doesn't make it statistically. So,
I just wanted to go back to that because
Yeah.
we've been
So-
talking about it for a long time, that really is the problem, is the
Well-
way that we fund it. And we're not alone. Other cities share this same, it's, how do you explain paying for 2 people for 1 job? It's kind of a weird
Right.
scenario with the police and how to do that.
well, and then you have somewhat of the awkwardness of when someone's eligible to retire and what if they change their mind?
Yes,
And so,
exactly.
it's,
Get hurt and it's budgeted.
yes,
And you
and
hired a new one.
right.
Your budget goes,
And we don't have the ability, nor do we want, we just have someone that got a 20-year pin.
And I think it's very, just so people watching understand the process, is we could hire an officer tomorrow to send to the academy. We can pay them all the way through, knowing that they're probably not gonna make it. But you'll still have to allow them go completely through that. Pay for them to go through it. To know that they're not gonna meet our standard.
Right.
That is correct. That is the absolute process of how you hire officers. It's the right thing to do, but that was a paid officer. They've been gone for a long time. So you can't just go hire another one knowing that they're not gonna make it because you don't know what, like you said, what's gonna happen in between.
Right, and sometimes there's movement, there's maybe promotions that incentivize a senior officer to stay who is eligible to retire. And actually, we have a number of people who are eligible to retire and I mean, they're not right now, so.
Well, and maybe they're not retiring also because they don't know if someone's gonna replace them, and these are their brothers out there on the street. So there's this kind of like, gotta get to a really good plan where maybe if someone's like, okay, I'm ready to commit to retiring and this is the timeline, then there's a plan in place to replace that person. So
These policies you want to implement, how would you bring those to come about?
Yeah, well, we have the existing policy manual called Lexipol, and just really, I think when you're making changes, it's kind of looking at everything and seeing how they're working, and so it's just a matter of using best practice. And I consorted with some other police chiefs in the state, before we implemented some of those. And this isn't dozens of policies, but really more like 4 or 5 at this point.
Is that brought before the council or just in-house is this?
In-house, yeah, it hasn't affected things like job descriptions and things that might go in front of the council.
Yeah, because if it doesn't affect HR or liabilities or anything like that.
No, not so far. There are policies that could do that. But good question.
Well, I just like your 3-step approach. I wrote it down: identify strategy, communicate and brainstorm. Identify the target number of number 3, but and then I also got wellness over here on the side, because I think that's really key to anybody. That you take care of your mental health and your physical health and the rest will follow. So I like where you're going with that, and I think it could be very attractive to other officers outside of our area too. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
I appreciate that. And it's something that we're all working on. This isn't the Joe show. Everybody's
That's what I mean. It's communicate and brainstorm. You got a team, right? Team building.
right. Staffing issues should be worked out with the staff first, and that's how I feel.
Yeah. So. All right, any other questions for? Who? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item is discussion regarding 4th of July fireworks. I know they're already asking about the prices went up a little bit on the.
No, well, there's a contract in your packet for tonight's approval. To get the fireworks going. That happens about this time every year. And as you recall, we did not do fireworks last year. We didn't know that at the beginning of the year, so we made some payment. So there's a rollover credit of $5,000 into this year's fireworks display. In the past, we spent around 20,000 on fireworks. There's some talk about bigger and better coming back, having a bigger party next year. And I just wanted to get that in council's language of what that means. Is it is 25,000, the right number for fireworks? Off the shore, we've done it off the island, we've done it off the barge. The barge seems to be a pretty good balance of the show. The port is this is nice to be able to do that with the use of their dock to load the fireworks and get them up here on the St. Helens Marina's barge. And that proposal is to do that, to do the in-water barge shot where they start at one end of the riverfront, come across and continuously
Float down.
just go down the river slowly and do the show. It's pretty nice. So everybody gets a good view that way. But yeah, just confirming the number is the question here. Question of whether or not we're gonna do it.
Same show as in the past or bigger, smaller or
It's
what?
the same Western display. It would just be a little more fireworks. You know, the prices have gone up.
Yeah,
Over on the island, they're bigger shells, so you get less. So when they're on the shore, they're smaller shells. And in the middle, it's kind of a balance of more of your fours and sixes rather than your sixes and eights. And
You said about the barge, it's moving, it's gonna change
they
the,
tow the barge just real slowly as far.
oh, so they're firing it as they're towing.
As they're towing it, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, it just kind of, they put it in neutral and it just kind of floated. Then I think they backed it up a little bit, to kind of, hit the engines, kind of thrust it. Blaster the shot, so.
So my question is, John, is we budgeted 20,000 last year, we paid 5, so we should have 15 budgeted still?
It's specifically budget for it, but there is money in the tourism federal revenue fund for that.
So, well, I think we need to see what profits are made off Halloween Town first, for sure. I don't know how much time we have to,
For tonight. I think,
I mean, it's tonight the
I
only
think,
night.
I think that,
It's timely, but it's not the only time.
well, and I,
March, didn't it? The date was March.
We got some time, and then maybe once we know a better idea of revenue.
can I speak for a minute? Cause
Sure.
I've been trying to step in and, I think that we need to go bigger and better. I think if you look at the tourism dates, cause it's what we do. 13 nights happens to be on a Thursday, which vendors could stay and roll right over into the 4th, which is Friday. And there should be probably a 2-day concert that day. And I think you should give the people a reason to celebrate the waterfront, the park. Redevelopment will be done by then for sure.
I think it was brought up that we were gonna do bigger and better.
Yeah, it
But what
was.
does bigger and better mean in terms of
Bigger.
actual money?
Money.
That's what we're trying to figure out. I
Well,
think we
they
all
set up the
agree.
show. They set up the show. It's what do we want to spend on it?
That's what we're talking about.
$30,000?
So we never paid Western for, they just canceled, right?
We had a,
5,000.
Rolled 5,000 rolled over
Yeah,
yes.
we had paid that.
next year.
Retained it, basically.
Yes.
And John is saying there's money in the tourism funds.
So, and with the shows being 2 years ago, the inflation and cost of workers, the pyros, cost of fireworks, a $25,000 show is gonna be no different than a $20,000 show two years ago. So, cause we skipped a year. I think it should be 30,000. Prove that.
Just
we did
thinking
something better.
Thinking ahead a little bit, so not this next 4th of July, but the next one is gonna be the country's 250th birthday. And a lot of places are gonna be going bigger and better that year. To me, that makes more sense. That's just a thought. Just planning, thinking ahead a little bit.
I'm just a man of my word, and we all talked about it. That's just me.
I don't have any problem going bigger than 20,000, but I don't think I personally feel comfortable knowing how much bigger until I know how much money we have to spend. it's like going grocery shopping before you have got your paycheck, in my opinion. So that's, I think if we have some time, we should make a more educated decision after we have a little bit more idea of revenue sources.
Well, the other thing I think we could consider or ask of Western is if this is our typical, what we've done typically in the last however many years, what would constitute more or bigger? You know what I mean? Yeah, can we get it? I mean,
It's all
maybe
about
I'm asking too
dollars.
much.
It's all about dollars.
Well, I know, but I mean, could they give us an estimate on what that would be?
I've been doing this way too long. It's all about dollars. How big a show do you want? How much are you willing to spend? I mean, how
Well,
little of a
there's
show?
the duration of the show, how long it is
That's
versus
right.
how big it is with the bigger shows.
Yeah.
I anticipate our tourism contractor is going to play a big role in our 4th of July festivities too. So have they been brought into this at all?
It's a good question.
We meet weekly and we're working on Christmas right now. We can have a meeting specifically about this if you want to kick it up to the next agenda.
I did talk to him about it personally, because I knew, looking at the dates. 13 nights will be happening Thursday. And then the 4th is Friday, so the 3rd and the 4th. And I think it's just wise to do a 2-day festival and shut down the front of the Strand and doesn't shut down till 5 anyhow, or 4. City Hall's not open on 4th of July. They do work for us, and I think that both those are contracted, so really, what is their, you know, they both are contracted, that's what I know. So.
Are we
I think
still-
the better?
Anticipating a May completion date for the park, is that correct? Everything's on track.
Gives us a
Great
2-month
broadcast.
buffer too. It's supposed to be for May 1st, so it gives us a 2-month buffer.
I like the idea of kind of like what you're saying, Don, just kicking it down to and talking with the event contractors. It's not necessarily if they're gonna do it, it's how we're gonna do it as a team. And I think their input is important as well.
Certainly do that. It's and Treadway is going to be coming and giving a report at the December 4th meeting of Halloween, the finances and all that. We'll report there, about that.
I know in the past, there was a large fundraising portion for fireworks. We don't do that anymore, but could that be a possibility too, where the city's gonna do this much, and if you want better, then you need to raise this much? Putting those bins back out in the grocery store, it's not gonna,
But nobody puts any money in.
yeah, but just,
I think the vendor in the beer garden, because see, 4th of July, in the past, we've never done that. They've always just let the Elks do the vendoring, the tourism. And that was pretty much it. This, you were saying to vendors, I have a 2-day event. And you can still sell beer, because there's already a beer garden set up for 13 nights. Not that you're targeting that, but that makes revenue. I think when we have them here, we'll have that discussion. But I think that's a big way of doing that. And I agree, put out whatever around the community. But they're already contracted to kind of reach out, try to get sponsors and stuff like that anyhow. That's what used to happen. It used to be like Ice and Beverage, Village Inn, Code and Corner, all would donate $200, $300 fundraising event, a street dance, which we played. The beer gardens, multiple eggs being served. And that was the biggest fundraiser, and then an auction. I have a family history with it, so that's why I know all this. Debbie Siska used to be a big part of it. Edel's. Lockens.
John, is there a reason why we'd be now? Today?
Well, only that Western's looking to purchase and secure the fireworks, because there's a long lead on getting the fireworks. So
They reached out to us, right?
That's the biggest driver is they want to do a fireworks order and get enough fireworks for us and the show we want. There was talk of being bigger and better. So it was 20, how about 25? That's just rolling over the last 5,000 into this seems like it may not be a massively bigger and better show.
30,000, 1.5 times bigger. All right. Any other discussion on fireworks?
We waiting, we just can't wait for Treadway to.
Yeah, we're going to. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a discussion with Treadway and once we have
That's pretty much the census I got.
the finances and see where we're at. So
All right. City Administrator report, John Walsh.
all right, thank you, Mayor. The fireworks. Review, there's several things on the agenda tonight I want to review. First here. First of all, election night debrief, I think all of us, myself included, have a little bit of a flat spot. Feel like didn't get enough sleep last night. But congratulations to those who are elected. Those are condolences to those didn't, public service is a tremendous commitment. And the city's been working really hard on a number of exciting transformative projects and as long as providing the day-to-day services such as police and all the other services that we provide, which is, it's a lot and you should be commended for it. Some other things that potentially could impact the city are the jail levy not passing. Lieutenant Hoag's still here that we've talked about that openly, that could have some impact on services to our community. Also the 911 CCOM didn't pass, so that'll be a closer margin on their reserves to probably come back again. So, that's it for the elections. And typically about this time of year, we start looking at a community survey on our 2-year cadence of updating our council goals. Council doing strategic planning updates and starting to work on those activities. We don't have our government affairs person Rachel anymore, unfortunately, to assist with that, but I'm trying to get through that and get to a place that we can have a facilitated discussion on all of those things, involve the newly elected in that as well. But trunk or treat was a very wet evening. But it was fun to see the police and the library and everybody together, kind of getting soaking wet together. Halloween, we talked a little bit about Halloween and having debrief on December 4th. There was a lot of barriers this year with the construction in the riverfront, the timeline of the contractor coming on board. But all in all, I think everybody made the most of it and tried to do the best we could. And for the most part, on the whole, it came out pretty well. So.
Yeah, with quick thinking, there was a second route put in, the detour was taken down. I don't think next year we're gonna have an issue with that. Because I don't want to forget, because I'll probably throw this away. I just want to thank Holcomb Waller for, giving testimony and we'll definitely look at that. I think the event coordinators will definitely remember that happening and we'll be looking at it next year.
Oh, that's a back way out.
Yep.
So the Christmas ships, will be December 14th. Threadway's broken down most all of this here. There will be setting up at the end of November, the decorations in the plaza. But on the 14th, the Christmas ships will be here. It's all the customary things about a captain's dinner, the Santa, Mrs. Claus, hot cocoa, the tree lighting ceremony. There'll be some music live and recorded that'll be playing. I'm not sure about the fire pits and things, but we'll see how the weather is. And the decorations and there'll be plenty of communication with the community newsletter, all that stuff. Then continuing to work on the police station siting at the Gable Road School District property. The due diligence effort is coming along. We haven't engaged a lot of civil design quite yet. We need the baseline information as far as the environmental, the wetlands, geotech survey for drainage. There's also some land use components around zoning that we need to address. So we're gathering all that baseline information, and the project team's gonna be starting working, weekly meetings, working on those types of things. Broadband, or the city's investment in broadband. And working with Strategic Networks Group. The county is also working with Strategic Networks Group, and they're working on a countywide effort. They've just recently issued an RFP, request for proposal, to have a network operator and service provider to help them with the broadband initiative investment. And this is really a good pairing where the city has done a lot of front work that really helps out a broader effort to the county to be able to find fiber to home to basically most all of the residents in the county if this all works as planned. And there's really minimal local investment in it. There's plenty of grants and state and federal funding, and private investment is the biggest driver here. But I was invited to participate in the RFP selection committee. Proposals, scored them, process right now. Won't be as much of a city effort, but the work that we've done will help establish the business case, because Helens has that critical mass of connections, that has the population base to help expand to a broader business case to make that investment. On your agenda tonight, you'll see accepting the high bid for the timber sales contract to Interfor Timber. We are getting $608,000 or $608 per thousand board feet. That number is much higher than last year. So usually 575 was our last one. So it's several $100,000 more for the same amount of volume. We're happy about that. There was some concern, you may have been some email traffic about the other species, and it was we just bid that was for in every sale. There's additional, there's cedar and alder and hardwoods, various hardwoods that are somewhat marketable. And those aren't a bid price, those are a fixed price because there's some lower percentage, and 86% of this sale is Doug fir, and the net communication with a forester, the net volume of what would be 500 loads of timber is about a half a truck of cedar. That's just a fixed rate number. It's kind of a minimal thing. There's two agreements on here for ratification, which means that I've signed them in just in the sense of timeliness. One of them is related to the David Lentz, our OTAC project construction manager, public safety building. It's an amendment to their contract. The other one is for Miller Consulting Engineers for professional structural engineering. In the past, we've used a local firm, Structural Nexus. They're no longer interested in providing services to the city. They have a lot of their big projects going. So we went back to Miller, which we were using before for structural review for like the school and the projects.
Well, so Mike wouldn't necessarily take those on.
Yeah, he would send the bigger projects out. Yeah, most the smaller stuff in, but school projects and things that are significant, we have some third party review them. There's a permit review fee that's collected as part of the permit. That's just to pay for those services. Drake's Towing and Recovery, their agreement is expiring, and there's a proposal to extend it another year to December 2025. Helens Marina for the harbor to continue for another year with the Harbor Master Services. There's a second amendment to Landis and Landis Construction for the First and St. Helens intersection joint utility undergrounding project, and that's about a $40,000 increase to the undergrounding work that they're having to do to connect those some of those Lumen customers up to services there. We're going to remove number 9, which is the Western Municipal Fireworks for next time. There's an agreement with there was 2 agreements for the Marine Board for the docks. And this is an agreement for the Marine Board for the Maintenance Assistant Grant, something we get every year, which helps offset the cost of maintaining the restrooms and the pump station, and that's for your consideration. And also a waterway sublease agreement with St. Helens Marina for the water. The lease numbers here 42848. It's at the end of Wyeth Street there between Axes and Dillard's.
So that's, the city has the property and they're subleasing it, or?
City has, it's city right away that extends out into the water. It's been leased for years,
Right.
and the city is just turning it back to the owners to let them manage the lease. All along, we've been just subleasing at no fee, and done some consultation with party involved, and feel like that's the best outcome.
I've talked about this before, I think. Okay.
That's it.
Good.
You have an executive session, so.
Yep. Before I adjourn, I'm gonna announce that we will be going into executive session under ORS 192.6602E. Real property, and H, consulting with counsel potential litigation. With that, we have adjourned. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. Right?